So, Paige, you made your directorial debut with the film What Haunts Us, and you got an Emmy nomination for exceptional merit in documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you came to make this movie. I mean, you had a very personal connection to this story, so talk a bit about the origins of it.
Yeah, this is a story about my hometown, and it's about my school, my community, my friends, and it was hard. It was a hard thing to make because of that, but it was a really important thing to make. And I realized, I think this is a story that sort of must have been sitting with me forever, really since high school. But it didn't really strike me until I became a mom. And when I became a mom, I became a mom in 2006. And, when you become a parent, like the world starts to look like a really different place. And I remember sort of my son Jackson was young, and I was home one day, and he was playing in the backyard, and my husband was coming home from work, and I was like, I'll make dinner and I'll put on, the news really, really fast. And I'm watching, I'm looking at CNN, and all of a sudden I see Jerry Sandusky. And I will never forget that moment. That was I think I almost dropped what I had in my hand, because Jerry Sandusky looked a lot like Eddie Fisher to me. And in that moment, I thought, wow, I feel like I'm a really good mom. Like I knew which car seat to use, and I know how to feed him, and I know the baby bottles, and but I don't know how to protect him from a predator, because no one ever talks about that. So I realized I hadn't learned anything from my school, from what horrible things had happened at my school. And I thought I needed to go on a journey to understand what happened in my past and how it was allowed to happen in order to protect my son in the present. And it just really led to this. I thought I really should document this and start letting really the world know, letting our community know the true story, because none of us really did. And then sort of letting the world know how and why it happens.
So just give us a little bit of context into, you went to this high school, and, you start seeing, several of your classmates are committing suicide, and, you start to dig deeper into that. And, there's this history of sex abuse by this coach. So talk a bit about going on this journey and making this discovery of what was really going on there.
Well, we knew something was funny about Coach Fisher in school. The joke in school was like, you'd say he was the trainer for the football team, so all the boys would have to go see him. So, let's say you injured your thumb. It's like, hey, coach, I hurt my thumb. And the joke was, well, drop your drawers. Coach, it's just my thumb. That was a joke. We didn't quite understand what that meant. But the grown-ups certainly should have. And they didn't do anything about it, and they should have. So it was sort of this kind of joke that went around us, this uncomfortable joke. So we knew Coach Fisher was kind of funny and that he had favorites. Listen, if he shined his spotlight on you, you were special. I mean, you wanted to be in the Coach Fisher Club. I mean, listen, it's the story that happened. It's textbook. It happens. It's the same story that happens everywhere. So that's sort of what we knew about him. And then in the late 90s, this kid, hero in my film, Gary Glover, he literally was walking down the street one day and saw Coach Fisher with a little boy in his car. And Gary was already grown up by then, in college. And he said, I can't take it anymore. And he went to the school, tried 3 times, tried to get the school to help him get Eddie Fisher out of teaching. The school wouldn't help him. So he went to the authorities and he said, listen, Coach Fisher molested me from ages 9 to 19. Poor God covered it up. They knew about it. They covered it up. And boys started to come out of the woodwork at that point. And the school was sued. So that's what we knew. We knew this happened. It was a huge lawsuit. Gary, the boys who sued won. But then we never quite talked about it again. I remember all of our friends, we were all sort of like, oh, is that horrible what happened to Gary Glover? That's all we sort of knew. And again, then later on I became a mom, and I was like, wait, what happened at my school? Like, what happened? And what I started to unpack was that it was so many boys. I mean, hundreds of boys were affected, and so many lives were destroyed, and so many boys had taken their life. So many boys had died by suicide along the way. In fact, while I was making the film, two boys, I say boys, but they were now men. Two of them died by suicide while I was making the movie. So I really knew it was an important thing that we had to come to terms with as a community in order to maybe start some sort of healing.
Well, certainly, I mean, there is this, we're in the midst right now of the Me Too movement where, women are coming forward and detailing, a history of abuse by powerful men. But it's still something that, many men have not come forward and talked about, because there's this stigmatization about it. Can you talk a bit about, how that sort of affected, all these, all these men coming forward about this, keeping it in themselves for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's another layer of it. It was another layer of it for them because they were boys. And here was a male teacher. I learned so much making this film. I remember saying to Gary, Gary is interesting on so many levels. He's an extraordinary person. But the abuse with Gary started when he was 9 years old, basically because it wasn't really Fisher's usual target age, but he had access to Gary. And Gary told me about the first time that it happened. Fisher had come to his home. He was taking Gary's sister Ethel. He was giving her a ride home from a football game. And he started to weasel his way into the family. He started to become very close with the family. And Gary lived far away from downtown Charleston. So the family would say, like, Coach Fisher, spend the night. You don't want to drive back. I remember that road in Charleston, that long road, that dark road back to town. You don't need to ride on that road. Just, spend the night. I mean, how kind was this family? And he just, and that's what happens. And he saw his in. And Gary was 9 years old the first time it happened. And he told me it was at his room. It was when people were downstairs. And I remember saying to Gary, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you run downstairs and tell what had happened? And he said, Paige, I was 9. I didn't have the words. And I was like, oh, right. I mean, it broke my heart. It's like, of course. Here was this young little boy who hadn't been talked to about this stuff, anything about this stuff. And when you have a figure like that who you look up to, who says to you, this is something special between us, it's our secret, what else do you know? You don't know anything else. And that really blew my mind when he told me that. It kind of killed me. And it made it all really, really clear. And then as time went on, it became more of their secret, and then there was more shame involved, and then you really couldn't tell. And then there's this great line that Stewart says in the film, which is, you're dying. Gary had always said, you're dying for others to find out, but you're dying to tell someone, but you're terrified that people are going to find out. So you have to live that. You have to live on that line, and that must be a pretty terrible place to have to live.
I think there's also this sense of, fear of coming forward against an authority figure, and certainly, a coach. We see it with priests or your boss or executives. It's very difficult to you feel like you might not be believed going up against someone that powerful.
Absolutely. Here's someone who's so loved in the community, loved by your parents, loved by other students. I mean, I get to. Eddie Fisher's paying attention to me. I guess this is what boys do. I don't know, and that's what he saw his way in, and they all see it that way. That's how they groom their victims. This is what these predators do, and if we understand that, we can help protect our children better.
One of the things you talk about in this movie, you mentioned this at the beginning, was the inaction of the school. And that's something that we see in all sectors of, there's eerie parallel between this and, Jerry Sandusky, or what we see at Ohio State going on right now with Jim Jordan, or or the Catholic Church. Obviously, there's this story out of Pennsylvania right now. Again, like another, just kind of covering it up. And, this guy too got, moved to another school, just like priests get moved to another church. Can you talk about that sort of willful inaction on behalf of people? Do you think it's just they don't want to cause a stir, or they just don't want to believe it?
I think it's all of those things. I think many times it's the institution is valued more than the individual. It's certainly the case at Portugal. Didn't want to sully the name of the school, so let's keep this quiet. Let's move him along. Let it become another school's problem, which is, I mean, it's just horrible. It's called passing the trash. It happens all the time. I also, there's this amazing expert I used as a consultant on the film, and she's my dear friend, Patty Fitzgerald. She's a sexual molestation prevention expert, and she teaches how to talk to our kids, how to help our kids understand and stand up to these things. And I say to her, Patty, because this exists in our own families too, right? The uncle or the aunt or the someone who's inappropriate or the predator who's in our own family. So why don't we stand up? Why don't we stand up for children? Why don't we, do something about it? We know it's so close to home. And she says, Paige, a lot of times we just don't want to believe it's true. We don't want to believe something like this can be true because it's horrible. And then sometimes if it has happened to your child, the notion that you're supposed to protect your children. And in this situation, we completely fail when this happens. And you feel like you've been the worst parent in the world, and nobody wants to come to terms with that. It's just hard all around. And I get that. So my focus on this was like, let's understand how these things happen so we can stop the war before it starts. We don't even have to go there. Patty's helped me do that.
Given that you went to this school and, you grew up with these people and you had such a personal connection to them, was this film in a certain sense a way for you to, come to terms with, I don't want to say your own inaction, but, was there some kind of feeling that now I can do something to make up for, what wasn't done back then?
I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, the truth is I didn't remember this story about the tennis state until I started diving into the story, peeling back the onion, literally going through the box. Like literally I remember all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I have this memory and I didn't do anything either. So, listen, we were kids. I'm not sure if we understood what we were supposed to do. I don't know. But all I know is I'm a grown up now. And if I didn't do anything then, this is my chance to do something. So I feel like that's part of it for me, this sadness and guilt for not doing something then. Here I am trying to do it now. I mean, I feel like, I think about it all the time. Like, I feel like I've got a pretty big mouth and I stand up for things I believe in and I'm not afraid to do that. But was I back then? Maybe I was. And that makes me sad. I'm embarrassed by that. But that's then and now's now. And I'm going to do something about it now. And this is it.
Was filmmaking always a goal of yours, or was it just the best possible use of the best possible way to get this story out there for you?
God, that's so interesting. I always thought that someday I studied film in school and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a filmmaker one day. And I moved here and I was an executive and then I just, I married my husband who's also an executive and now a producer. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done with that. I'll go do other things, philanthropic things and things like that. I'll be a mom. And I was always doing something, I had a baby business and I was always doing something. And no, I did not know what I was doing. No, I still don't. Even now, every day is, new to me. But it just felt like it was the kind of story that needed to be told on film, and I had never seen it done this way before. Because we've all seen those movies. They have been extraordinary movies made about the topic. They're horror films. They are really intense, and they need to be. I think they're amazing. But I knew for me, I needed to make the kind of film that I could sit through as a mom. So that was always sort of my test. If I could sit through it, someone else could. And that's the kind of film that will possibly help people stand up and help promote change. And I knew my town needed something like this. You know, my community needed to be able to see it in order to be able to talk about it. Yeah, that's really where it came from.
And to have this kind of recognition from the TV Academy, certainly that helps make people aware of the film. So what does that mean for you?
Oh, it means everything, because it means the topic doesn't die, because it is a topic that people don't want to talk about. They still don't want to talk about it. People are still mad at me in Charleston for making the movie. I mean, an overwhelming amount of people are really proud and are grateful, but I'm still getting messages from people that are like, you know, please, who do you think you are? We worked hard to put this away. Why did you bring it up again? You know, you're causing more pain. So there are plenty of people who don't want to talk about it. And that's okay. That's their right. But there are plenty more who need to hear it. And the notion that the TV Academy recognized this film just means that the conversation can continue. And that's why we made it, so that it can save lives. And I from all the messages I'm getting from people, I know it's out there doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm really grateful for that.
Well, Paige, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on the movie. It's really powerful stuff, and it does help contribute to that conversation.
Thank you so much for taking an interest in my movie and the topic at large. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you.